The explanation we got for why Blood of the Dead took place in this timeline and not the original needs to do some explaining for itself, because currently with the information we have, it doesn't make too much sense, and that's exactly what we're going to be discussing in this video. And the main reason it doesn't make too much sense all has to do with Mob of the Dead, and the problem is that it took place in both the original timeline and this new timeline we're dealing with. But before I can explain exactly why that is the case, I want to do a quick summary of exactly what the explanation we got for the Blood of the Dead taking place is, and then after that I'll explain to you guys why it doesn't make much sense, again with the information we currently have. So the quick summary of why Blood of the Dead took place goes a little something like this, and how it actually happened is that the Shadow Man got in contact with the Warden from Alcatraz because the Warden was some sort of occultist, devil worshiper type of deal thing, and because of that he had a connection to the Shadow Man for one reason or another. And what the Shadow Man actually did is have the Warden create the Alcatraz pocket dimension, and how he actually went about doing this was by somehow using the three mobsters and Weasel, of course the rest of the mobsters being Billy, Cell, and Finn, using them to somehow, by killing them, creating the pocket dimension, and also at the same time some sort of purgatory type of deal thing. And not exactly sure how that works, but that's kind of the explanation for how this pocket dimension popped up in the first place. And of course the pocket dimension is where both Mob of the Dead and Blood of the Dead take place. But of course, fast forwarding to when this relates to Richtofen, is that the reason why this pocket dimension was created in the first place was not for the Mob of the Dead characters, but instead it was created because the Shadow Man wanted to capture and trap Richtofen here because he wanted to get his blood. And as we all know, because Richtofen has had a lot of exposure to the ether by traveling between different dimensions, timelines, and universes, his blood is quite powerful and can create tears in space where things could teleport to other universes, timelines, and things like that. And of course, the Shadow Man would really want this power because him and the rest of the Apothicons are trapped in the dark ether under all creation. And of course, they want to escape there and return to Argartha. So this is something that could actually open that opportunity for them to actually do, to use his blood to escape the place that had been trapped for millennia and really for so long. So that's the quick explanation for what is exactly going on and why everything is happening inside Blood of the Dead. It's really just because the Shadow Man wants Richtofen's blood, and how he went about doing it is by trying to capture him in this Alcatraz pocket dimension, of course, where Blood of the Dead and Mob of the Dead take place. Now, whether this plan worked or not is up for debate currently, because some people will say that Richtofen's blood is all used up. It was used by our characters when they, of course, left to go wherever they were going. But of course, other people are saying that, oh no, his blood's still there and just infinitely works. So somebody could go there. The Shadow Man may go to this Alcatraz pocket dimension and you get his blood and then use it to do whatever he was planning to do. Now, that's not really what we're going to be talking about inside this video. Instead, we're going to be talking about why this doesn't really make sense, because the thing is, Blood of the Dead, or excuse me, Mob of the Dead takes place in both this new timeline where Blood of the Dead takes place, and it also takes place inside the original timeline where Blood of the Dead doesn't take place. And that may not sound like a problem at first, but you have to remember why Mob of the Dead was created in the first place. It was created, at least according to Blood of the Dead, for the sole purpose of capturing Dr. Edward Richtofen to use his blood. And the problem with this is that Blood of the Dead didn't happen in the original timeline, so why would Mob of the Dead happen if Blood of the Dead didn't? It just doesn't make too much sense, because if the sole purpose of this pocket dimension was to capture Richtofen, then why didn't it happen inside the original timeline? It's rather we're missing some sort of information, or something's going to be revealed to us in the future, or they just doesn't really make sense, because this pocket dimension existed inside the original timeline where our characters, our premise characters, went in and out, grabbed the blood vials, and left right after Zetsubo no Shima. But this time that didn't happen for some weird reason or another, and we just don't really know why that is the case. And that is the huge problem with it, is that even though this pocket dimension, this Alcatraz pocket dimension, actually existed inside the original timeline, it just didn't work. Are we just to assume that the Shadow Man's plan didn't work and it just didn't work for who knows what reason? I don't know. I can't even think of one. Or are we just going to say that there's some new explanation that we're going to get down the road? But either way, currently this story just doesn't make sense, or this explanation we have doesn't make sense. And that's not to say that there isn't a way to explain it away. I mean, there's a bunch of different reasons. You could say that Mob of the Dead's original purpose inside the original timeline had something entirely different to do. Maybe it was created for the blood vials to work, because you have to remember the blood vials that Richtofen was using, of course, from the mobsters, they had to work because the characters or the mobsters had to travel between different timelines, and the only way for them to do that is to go to the Mob of the Dead pocket dimension, or the Alcatraz pocket dimension, of course, allowing their blood vials or their blood to change and be able to protect them all the way inside Revelations. And you could say that was the original reason, but now it's swapped up, and the Shadow Man is now again working with Primus and trying to fight against Dr. Monty, and we're just not seeing the bigger picture currently. I mean, there's a couple different ways to explain it, but currently it just doesn't make too much sense why the pocket dimension existed inside the original timeline and didn't really cause Blood of the Dead to happen, even though the Shadow Man created it for the sole purpose of Blood of the Dead to happen. It just doesn't seem to make sense why it wouldn't happen in the original timeline but did happen in this other timeline. There's just some explaining left to do. Now, hopefully I explained that enough, and hopefully you guys understand exactly what I'm saying here. Hopefully I didn't get too confusing, but I would love to hear what you guys think about this. Do you guys think it's just a flat out mistake by Treyarch, or do you actually think that, of course more like me, that there's going to be some greater explanation for what's going on here? Personally, I do think that the Shadow Man is going to be working with Primus this time around, and maybe if the Shadow Man isn't a good guy, I still don't think he's a good guy, but I do think that we may have similar goals, that we may be working to, and we're just currently working together with each other. And I want to talk about this in a separate video, but it really reminds me of a quote from the Shadow Man that we hear inside Revelations. And the quote, all it really is that the Shadow Man saying, "I hope one day Richtofen remembers the promise he made to me all those years ago." And I mean, all those years ago, maybe relating to maybe back in the ancient times where Primus were fighting in the medieval times, maybe alongside the Shadow Man. I'm not sure, but we're just going to have to wait and see. But regardless, again, I would love to hear what you guys think about all of this, and I've been going on too long, rambling too much here at the end, so I'm going to go end this video. If you guys did enjoy the video, go ahead and do all the normal YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, bell, share, and especially bell. But I'm going to go, and I'll catch you guys in the next stream or video.
That